Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC. The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Joan Eats.
And I have been eating at some old favorites which just reopened again. And, you know, I think I mentioned to you recently, eating in restaurants, and I've been eating outside. It may be getting a little too nippy to do that. But these restaurants and their staff, they have truly suffered. I mean, everyone has suffered. We have actors coming on our show who were telling us they didn't work for almost 2 years. And I feel that if we can go out, it can be anything. Any place. It doesn't have to be top of the line, but we should. And we should tip because there has been no money and a lot of businesses have been hurt. A lot of our favorites shut down for a long time and now just open again. So recently I went over to a terrific restaurant called Elio's, which many of you are familiar with, 1621 2nd Avenue. On 84th Street. It was always, even though it's local, meaning the Upper East Side, it was a very popular restaurant, and the bar was always packed with a lot of young people who would hang out. It was like family almost. The bartender knows everyone. The waiters have been there forever, and we absolutely loved it. And I said whenever I would go there, I'd see Tom Selleck sitting in his corner table with someone who looked very official, his manager, his agent, his friend, and very low-key, eating his pasta and, you know, not being bothered by anyone. That's the kind of place it was. You could be the most famous or a normal person, and everyone is very happy to be there. What I love about Elio's is the chicken scarpiella. I'm telling you, it is the best in New York. Absolutely delicious. And then at the end of the meal, I call them mommy cookies. They're these little round cookies, which when I was a kid, every Friday my mother would bake. And she would make these little round butter cookies, paper thin. And then when I started going to Elio's, those cookies would appear on a plate near the end. It was like a message from my mother saying, it's okay. You know, I'm still around watching you devour these cookies. But it's a restaurant I love, and they have a very nice outside. Let's hope it doesn't get too cold to eat outside. And another neighborhood restaurant, which has a lot of delicious food, but their veal chop, if you eat meat, is quite spectacular. Nicola's at 46 East 84th Street. And again, it's part of a neighborhood, but it's a destination. In fact, I see a lot of broadcast people in there, and I've even seen our owner, John Catsimatidis, who I've seen him at Nicola's, and a lot of Fresco, a terrific restaurant on Madison Avenue in the 50s, owned by the Scotto family. So delicious. The gorgonzola potato chips, all the good things, and it's a family. And we love to be in places like that. And then if you're out in the Hamptons, this is a good time to go because it's not as crazy as usual. A French bakery and restaurant opened on Montauk Highway in Bridgehampton with unbelievable breads that they make every day, handmade pastries, pizza, pasta, delicious seafood, Long Island oysters, a full bar, and they do, like in France, these homemade baguettes with fromage and jambon ham and cheese. They do it with a bacon and egg, and they have something which I've never had before. Maybe you guys have. Brie, but the kind of soft melting brie cheese with homemade preserves on a homemade baguette. Not too bad. Pretty delicious. And they have a pork dish. If you eat that, that's one of the best things I've ever had. So, and they have outdoor space too. And favorites, Tutto El Giorno. It's owned by the Donna Karen family, her daughter and the daughter's husband. They're in Southampton on Nugent Street, and they do dinner every night from 5 o'clock, lunch only on the weekends. And they also have one I love on Main Street in Sag Harbor, lunch Thursday through Sunday from noon to 3. And they have really, if you want to splurge, I don't mean money-wise, it's not cheap, but it's, if you do look at calories, they're rigatoni with a fresh tomatoes, veal, beef, spicy sausage, peas, a touch of cream is very good. And they have a catch of the day, a fresh fish baked in parchment paper with black olives, capers, cherry tomatoes. Really, really good. And they have great outdoor dining options at all locations. So you're not going to go hungry listening to the Joan Hamburg Show. More coming up.
Taking you behind the curtain. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome, everyone, to the Joan Hamburg Show. I've got a real treat for you today. Two fabulous guests, Henry Winkler and Lynn Oliver. And, it's interesting. My producer-engineer and I were talking about Mr. Winkler earlier on, and he said, I can't believe that those books, and he was familiar with the books, were all written with Henry Winkler. I said, a Renaissance man. Nothing but the best guests do we get. And Lynn Oliver, who describes her childhood where she and her sister had pink and green hair because their mom constantly dressed them alike and they hated it. So they've both come a long, interesting way to celebrate a brand new book from that duo, Henry Winkler and Lynn Oliver, Alien Superstar, Hollywood versus the Galaxy. And I know it's a children's book, sort of middle school book, but I'm telling you, it's for everyone. It's funny as can be. It's a great read. And of course, I sat up the other night thinking, this is for my granddaughter, but there I am, laughing and glued to it and feeling if I were a kid, I would really feel good if I read this book because I wouldn't feel like I was alone or I was different or I couldn't do anything. I would start to value the things that make each person special. So congratulations.
Thank
guys.
you.
It's really great. And Lynn, we'll start with you. Just like Henry, who sort of knew what he wanted to do from the time he was a kid, you really knew you wanted to tell stories and be a writer from the time you were a kid.
Absolutely. It's one of my earliest memories that I always wanted to be a writer. In fact, I tell the story that when I was little, literally like 2 years old, I would go up and down our block in Burbank where I was raised and knock on people's doors and say, do you want to know what happened at our house last night? So my parents were not thrilled with that behavior.
I'm sure.
There were when you live with a writer, even if the writer is 2 years old, there are no secrets.
Right. And Henry, you describe your childhood, you said, which I loved, you grew up with a high level of low self-esteem and that academics were not your strong suit in those years.
No, I literally am, I'm clocked in the bottom 3% academically in America.
But you stepped over that 3%.
Do you know why? What we write about is that how you learn has nothing to do with what you can achieve, with how brilliant you are.
Yeah, but it sometimes a hard journey to get to that point.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But I think sometimes that hard journey literally prepares you for the battle in life.
Yeah, well, you're making a good point, but when you were just a kid, it was eighth grade, I think I read, you were in a high school play, and instead of going into the family lumber business, which the parents dreamed of, you sort of knew that this was the path you were going to take.
It is really true. And here it is. When you know what you want without ambivalence, you just keep walking toward your dream. And eventually you get there. And here I am with Lynn. This is our 37th novel together. And I never in a million years thought I could be part of a team that would write one.
Right, let alone all, and so successful. But Ben, how did you and Lynn in different worlds come together? How did you even know that you were going to do this?
Very simply, there was a lull in my acting career.
After
a mutual
Fonz?
friend, after the Fonz, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I literally thought I was going to beat the system. That the Fonz was so popular, so big, I was going to go from mountaintop to mountaintop. And I found myself sliding right into the valley.
Mm.
And a mutual friend suggested I write books about my dyslexia. And I said, I can't do that. He said, I'm going to introduce you to my good friend, Lynn Oliver, who is who started the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators that now have like 37,000 members around the world. Wow. And we had lunch, and we hatched Hank Zipser to begin with, and here we are.
Right. All these books later, and for both of you, enormously successful, which, it's not so easy in the world of books.
Well, it's been a really satisfying journey because we hope that what we write about. I was so thrilled, Joan, to hear your introduction where you talked about how in reading Alien Superstar, what the thought that occurred to you was that how important it is to value our differences and to know that each person is different and unique. And so that's what we write about. That's the underlying theme of, even though we write comedy and entertainment, that's the underlying theme of everything we write about. So it's been satisfying not only to have the book so commercially successful, but to know that they're reaching an audience of kids who need to hear that message.
Right. And especially Henry, who describes really having a tough struggle academically in school, although he found his way, he was gifted as an actor. But Henry, you were a grown-up before they understood that you weren't a terrible student. You suffered from dyslexia, and it just hadn't been recognized.
Right. When I married Stacy, Jed, my oldest, my stepson, came with the marriage, a wonderful gift, and we had him tested in the third grade. And everything they said to him was true about me. And it was at 31, I realized I wasn't stupid, that I literally had something with a name. Right. And then Lynn and I created a character together over bad fish in a restaurant that would embody that little boy's journey. And then out of that came Ghost Buddy, and then out of that came the Alien Superstar. And this is the third in a trilogy. But I like to say that we write our books so they're fun to read, all three of them, but this you could also read as a standalone, and it would be satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the parent as well as for the child, because it reinforces those lessons that sometimes parents, in their zeal to have successful children, forget. So I was really impressed with all of that.
Thank you.
And of course, Henry, in your journey, you talk about your family too. And even though I had heard the story about your dad leaving to come to America, I never get tired of hearing that story. The melted chocolate and the jewelry. It's
Right.
still
So
an extraordinary story.
My father got a 6-week visa to come to America to explore his business, which was importing and exporting wood. As they left Germany, he took his wife, my mother's jewelry, and my grandmother's jewelry, bought a box of chocolate, melted down the chocolate, and then poured it over the jewelry, let it harden. So when the Nazis said, "Are you taking anything of value out of the country?" he said, "No, open all my bags, there's nothing." And under his arm was this box of chocolate. He then pawned the jewelry when he got to New York. That allowed him to start a new life here. And then he was able to buy the jewelry back. And on my bar mitzvah, I got my great-grandfather's pocket watch that came out of Germany encased in chocolate.
Unbelievable. You know, I never get tired of that story because
Thank you.
it's all about ingenuity too. Who would
It
think
is.
of such a thing? I'm such, so pessimistic sometimes. I would think that the Nazis would say, "Oh, that looks good. Let's have a piece."
Thank God they didn't. They were on a diet.
They lucked out in that particular group. But both Henry and Lynn, everyone has turning points in life. And Henry, you started working fairly early. And then when the Fonz came about, who expected that would be such a big deal? I still remember giving my husband a birthday party of a high school prom because he said he never went to his own prom. And almost all the guests came like you. They were all
my
wearing
God, that's
leather
great.
jackets, all the
That's
stuff.
great.
It was such a power force then. And it took a while for it to catch on, but once it caught, that was
Yes,
it.
really. Yeah. And Lynn and I, what we did was, as we travel around the world, really, and the country, and go into classrooms and talk to the children, read to the children, the kids are fascinated by Hollywood and
Of
what is
course.
it, and they're fascinated by outer space. And so we took the two and we put them together in this book, Alien Superstar, Hollywood versus the Galaxy. And then Lynn has produced and written hundreds of episodes of television. I've been on television. So we wrote what we knew.
And the combination has been magical. What you do is you think about where children are already interested. And as Henry said, all kids are fascinated with space and space creatures. And most kids are fascinated with celebrity, with what it's really like to be a Hollywood superstar. So when we put those two ideas together, we created the story of an alien kid who's from a red dwarf planet out in the universe, who has to flee his repressive government, and he gets into a rocket ship that's built by his engineer grandmother, Grandma Wrinkle, and goes to the only place in the universe that feels safe, which is Earth. And his spaceship lands on the back lot of Universal Studios, where the tour is going on. And so when he disembarks from his spaceship as an alien, he fits right in because everybody else who's walking around is dressed as a character. So it's the story of his life on Earth as an alien, hidden in plain sight.
Right. And becoming sort of a hero in the world of media.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. But Lynn, when, a lot of kids, everyone, like where my kids grew up, they all want to be actors, writers, easier said than done. So even though you were telling stories from the time you were a wee child, what was the break where someone said this kid can really, or this young woman can really write, and took your first book? What was that process?
It's kind of like Henry, whose parents, wanted him to be in the family business.
Right.
my parents, my father was a lawyer and my mother was a doctor. So the fact that they had a child who wanted to be a writer with an uncertain future, and as my father pointed out to me repeatedly, a job with no health insurance,
Right.
that was very alarming to them. So it took a lot of persistence to convince him that I was willing to take the health insurance risk in order to try and succeed in my dream, which was to be a writer. And so I persisted. Something we talk to kids about is, if there's something you want to do, you have to practice. You have to practice to get good at it. It doesn't just happen. So I wrote all through grammar school. I was editor of my high school paper. I was editor of my college paper. I won a journalism contest. And then I won a comedy writing contest to work in Hollywood writing sitcoms. So I persisted all those years practicing to try and achieve the skill to succeed. So I guess the turning point for me was when I got to work at Universal Studios as a writer-producer. That sort of established me in my own eyes, and certainly in my father's eyes, because it came with health insurance.
Exactly. The things that everyone cared about, right?
That's right. That's right.
So, and then Henry, you, after the Fonz, which was a huge run and life-changing.
Life-changing.
And like a lot of my pals who are actors who have been on TV or sitcoms or stuff, it was always the same story. I got to get rid of this character now or I'm not going to get work again. And what did it take for you to jump over the Fonz, which was so good to you, to the next step?
Well, first of all, not denying that I had this wonderful experience playing Fonzie on Happy Days. But what I had to do then was to take another direction, and you have to reinvent yourself. So part of my compensation for Fonz was to be able to produce a show if ABC liked it, if I brought them a show they liked. And thank God the first show we brought them was MacGyver.
Yeah, which was a big deal.
And it turned out to work. And then I started to direct a little bit. And then in 1991, Happy Days finished in 1983. In 1991, I started to get acting roles that were not Fonz-like. And then in 2002, I met Lynn and we started writing together. And then all of a sudden, I was a fledgling writer of children's books.
Right, a turnaround. And now, Barry, a movie, you're in a Wes Anderson movie.
Yes, it comes out on the 22nd. It's called The French Dispatch.
Yeah.
And I just want to say it is an honor that I got the call to be in a Wes Anderson movie.
I get that totally.
You know, I was standing on the set, and he said, "Henry," and I thought, "Oh my God, he's going to give me a direction now. I'm going to be directed by Wes Anderson." And he said, "Could you move a millimeter to the left?" And I said, "Yes, I can. Here I go."
Oh, it's so funny. I have a pal, Bob Balaban, who...
Oh my God, he's my brother. He's my brother in the movie.
He said that because we were just talking about you guys coming on with Alien Superstar, and he said, and I had mentioned your name. He said, "You know, I just did a movie with him." And that was the Wes Anderson movie, which is, you know, like I worship Wes Anderson too. Just knowing that you were in that movie is such a big deal. The guy's such a genius.
Oh my God. I mean, to watch him, you know, there are no stand-ins. So you do all of that. You stand there for 2 or 3 hours while he is setting up the shot until it is perfect for him. And I whispered to Bob, I said, "Bob, I have an idea for Wes. Should I tell him?" And Bob whooped his head around and said, "No." And so then I was really quiet then for the rest of the shoot. But Lynn and I are not quiet when we're writing Alien Superstars.
Together or separate?
Together. Now, because of the pandemic, we had to do some of it on the Zoom. But for years, we were in Lynn's office. I sit across from her, and we argue over every word.
So
We discuss every word, Henry.
Right.
We discuss every word.
Vigorously.
and then does someone say okay and gives in?
Both. I literally sometimes, Lynn said, you know what, I hear it this way, or no, I really need it to, I need to use this word here. I think this is the right word. And sometimes I say the same thing. I really need to hear the rhythm of the way the sentence goes. And so we both give it.
And Henry, in addition to all these books and the brand new one we're celebrating, Alien Superstar, Hollywood versus the Galaxy, you've got TV stuff. You've got all kinds of things in the mill.
Well, last night at 10 o'clock, I finished a scene on Barry, the season 3.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's like God reached down and said, Henry, this is going to be a great time for you.
But it's been a great time for a long time, and may it continue.
Thank you. And we just had a granddaughter.
Oh, what's so exciting?
Oh, my God. Frances Joan is 8 days old.
Wow. And where does Frances Joan live? Is she an L.A. granddaughter?
All of our children, we now have 6 grandchildren. Lynn has 3.
And
3.
actors, writers in the mix?
I don't know. You know what? I think maybe, yes, Gus, my 3-year-old grandson, is just a born performer. It is totally natural.
How great. And what about your kids, Lynn? Actors, writers?
I have 3 sons. Only one is a writer.
Uh-huh.
One is in real estate and urban planning, and one is in sports. And then I have 3 grandchildren. It's too young to know what they are, but I'm happy to report that I'm coming to New York in 2 weeks, and I'm taking my 8-year-old granddaughter to her very first Broadway play.
Oh, what are you taking her
loves
to?
Broadway, and so we are creating this memory together, and I'm so grateful for that.
What are you taking her to see?
Well, I gave her a choice, and she chose, of course, Hamilton, because she
Of
can
course.
rap all the lyrics.
Oh, you're kidding.
All about Lafayette and people I'm sure she's never heard of. She can do it word for word for the entire 3-hour production.
Unbelievable. And when I saw Hamilton, I literally had to listen to the score before I went over and over again, before I could make sense of it. So
Of
God
course.
bless that child.
That's exactly right. She's at the moment, as we're speaking, shopping for a new dress and fishnet stockings
How fabulous.
to wear to her first Broadway
What
play.
else? Have a
Yeah.
wonderful trip to New York, Henry. Loved
Thank you.
catching up with you, and both of
Always
you
a pleasure, Joan.
love the book. And
Thank
the
you.
book is available in all the bookstores, everywhere you buy books. Alien Superstar, Hollywood versus the Galaxy. 2 great people with wonderful stories. Henry Winkler, Lynn Oliver. Enjoy everything. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC.
Taking you behind the curtain. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
All right, everyone. I'm really excited because we are celebrating Broadway, something we do often. And Broadway is back. You cannot imagine, if you haven't been there yet, the lines that are waiting to see everything and the enthusiasm of the people in the theaters. It's such a thrill. And 2 of our best, biggest shows are celebrating right along. Michael James Scott, the Genie in Aladdin. He is back at the New Amsterdam Theater. Adrienne Walker, now in The Lion King at the Minskoff Theater. They are back. These are Disney's greats. and you guys are going to love going to the theater because I'll tell you, Disney is doing a great job. If anyone changes plans, doesn't matter. Disney says, come on, exchange your tickets if you need it, free of charge. We'll pay all Ticketmaster fees. And then, of course, you're going to see two of Broadway's best celebrating in their own worlds. So, Michael and Adrienne, I know it's the same question we all ask, but you, like so many of us, were so-called furloughed for long periods of time. And now there you are back to full houses and the joy of an audience drinking in the magic of theater. So what did it feel on the first opening night again?
It was explosive. I could not have imagined a better experience. And I did think about it quite a lot. What will it be like to get back on stage again? What will the audience be like? What will that first performance be like? And it was incredible. T.D. Manye opened her mouth to sing "Nah," and the entire audience exploded. And it was like that for the rest of the show. And the performances are still that exciting. And we've been up and running now for 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And the audiences, I was also curious if there would be a lot of people. How many people are going to show up? The audiences have been packed. So it just feels like we not only took up where we left off last March, but that it's even more thrilling and more exciting than I ever could have imagined.
And you know what's so interesting? And I'm talking, by the way, that's Adrienne Walker, who's starring as Nala in The Lion King, and Michael James Scott, the Genie in Aladdin. You know, New Yorkers love to complain, right? We complain about traffic. We complain about real estate. But when I was at the theater the other night, recently, the lines were around the block of people waiting to get in. It was cold. No one. They were so excited. I couldn't believe it myself. And they, had to go through the vaccine approval, the whole bit. Not one complaint. Happy as larks to be back where they belong. And Michael, did you have the same with Aladdin, the opening night again experience? Like who was going to be there? Or am I going to be up to myself again? I haven't done it in so long. What happened?
Oh my gosh. Yes, no, I mean, just as you're saying, I think that's exactly right. The energy, it's just unlike anything else. This is at a historic time for Broadway to be reopening. This means so much to obviously New York City, but also to the country and to the world to see that this Broadway community is back and what that does for our whole community and how that infiltrates throughout the world, right? And so for me, I get to have the amazing fortune to stand on the stage and the curtain drops and there I am. You see the Genie, first thing you see, and it's just the Genie in a spotlight and addressing the audience. And that moment I had dreamt about for all these months, to our return of like, what would that be like for people? And I tell you, it did not disappoint because it was just unlike a feeling like part of my soul was back, with just having theater in my life, again, having Broadway, having that intimacy that is live theater, and not sitting on my couch watching TV. So to be able to have that experience, it's just unlike anything else that you can imagine. And people are hungry for it, and people are ready for it. So I get excited about that moment as I'm walking to the theater every day. I anticipate that moment every night as I'm walking to the theater.
Which is absolutely incredible. And the other feeling that as someone watching shows is that we're not going to take it for granted again. This is magic and it belongs to us and it's the heart of the city. And both of you, and if you've just joined us, Michael James Scott, the Genie in Aladdin at the New Amsterdam Theater, Adrienne Walker, the Lion King at the Minskoff Theater, and both of our stars have been in major Broadway productions, traveled everywhere with theater, and both of them started as kids. Michael, you were 4 years old, growing up in Florida, and you
Yes.
were already doing commercials. Like, how did your family even know to do that? You weren't like in the middle of New York City, where sort of every kid wants to be a model or an actor, or at least their parents want them when they're little. So, how did your family
Yes.
say, "This kid has got it, let's do something"?
Well, Joan, I wanted to sing and dance since I was little. My mom said I sang before I spoke. So I have been doing like this. I've been wanting to just entertain since I was a little kid. I say it all the time. I did it in grocery stores, libraries where you're supposed to be silent. I was singing instead of being silent reading books. I'm like humming tunes in the library. And for me, it was just this thing. I call them angels. These, my the teachers, particularly who to me teachers are angels and superheroes, and those they saw something special in me, and they literally contacted my parents and said, "Can we help? There's something special about your child. We can't get him to shut up. He just wants to sing and dance. What can we like? Can we help?" And they literally would get me. I got involved with, children performance groups, and then ultimately commercials and TV down in Orlando, Florida. And my mom, I say this all the time. I had parents who just simply said yes. They had no idea. They were not show parents. They had no idea what to do, but they just sort of like, we kind of found our way. And, really relied on the community. I come from a community who really believed in young artists and really invested in young artists. And for me, it wasn't about the color of my skin. It wasn't about, the income bracket that my family was in. It was literally about the wonderment in a child's eyes and seeing that there was something that was drawing me to to this idea of performing and to the arts. And that for me, as I say it all the time, I am the product of a community that really cared about the arts, and we just made our way. We asked questions. We did everything we could to find out the resources that were around us to figure out how we do this. My parents, I was actually born in Baltimore, Maryland. They wanted to get their and we lived in the inner city of Baltimore, and I say, a lot. My parents just wanted to get their boys out of the inner city and didn't want them to be another black male statistic, to be honest with you. And instead, they moved us to Orlando, Florida, into the suburbs, where we they tried to figure out what to do to give their boys and sacrifice a better life to make something different for but that their story would be different from what theirs was growing up.
And in the beginning, did they find that? Was it different, or did it take an adjustment?
They found it from the very beginning, because truly within the first 6 months of us moving down, both my brother and I were a part of. He was on a different path with like sports and that kind of a thing, and then ultimately the culinary arts industry. But then, for me, it was performing. It was being in front of people, in front of the camera, in front of a live audience. So it happened pretty fast, and it was kind of incredible what happened when they put their boys into an environment that just really said yes.
And nurtured them.
And really try to make something happen for, young artists, young kids who had a little sparkle in their eyes with what it was that they were interested in.
Right. And Adrienne, you also didn't grow up in New York City. You're an actor and a vocalist. As I remember, you were brought up in Atlanta, in a community outside of Atlanta, and you started singing too as a kid. It started in church. You thought opera was going to be the future, and then life has a way of taking you by the hand, and it led you to something different.
Absolutely. Life will always surprise you. I'm sure you're familiar with that saying, we plan and God laughs.
Exactly.
And that has been my life. I had a really supportive upbringing when it comes to what I wanted to do and trying to figure out how I wanted to live my life. And I grew up a pretty shy kid. So singing, I love to sing, but singing in public was never like on the list. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in high school. And my mom, she said to me, Adrienne, what do you do all the time? And I looked at her, I was like, I don't know. And then she just gave me this look like, you know what you do all the time. And I said, sing? And she said, yeah, why don't you pursue that? See what happens from that. And that's what kind of led me to classical voice. And I thought, I'm going to do this opera thing. And I went to grad school in Chicago because that's what you do when you're studying classical voice. And about a year in, I realized that it wasn't for me. And I did finish my degree, but I finished with the mindset that I was going to do something else. And that was musical theater. And I can't even believe where I am today because I started so late. And you hear that,
Wait,
if you
what
want
do
to
you
do.
mean you started so late? How old?
Well, I didn't do my first musical theater production until I graduated from grad school. So I was 24,
Well,
and that's kind of late for theater,
no.
You hear
Right.
a lot of stories of people starting out as kids and going to theater programs and doing summer stock and going to a performing arts college and just knowing what they're going to do and honing those skills. And I honed my skills in audition rooms. I went to my first dance call in men's gym shorts and a T-shirt. I had no clue what I was doing. And I figured it out along the way.
And you started getting work early. I mean, even though to you it's late, you started working and getting real parts, real roles. And Michael had talked about the fact that his parents, because they were bringing up kids of color, wanted them out of that inner city environment. Did you find that being a young woman of color was more difficult? Have you seen it change? Did the pandemic and all that's been going on in this country have any impact upon your world, the theater world?
What I hope to see, and what I'm starting to see, is that that casting can open up with more than just color. And it's been my experience that when I go in for a part, that sometimes they're just trying to fill certain quotas to make sure that the stage doesn't look lily white. And what I'm starting to see now that people have brought more voice to that is that the stages are going to have a true representation of what the country really looks like, that there's a lot of different diversity. There's diversity in not just race, but in ability and size and age. And I just hope that now people are more aware of that we'll start to see that on the stage as well. And I hope that we start to see it in the writing and that it's not just, let's fill a quota because we'd want to be politically correct, but that it's actually a part of the art and that we start telling stories that encompass all of us. Recently over the break, we watched a lot of TV and film, and one of them was Lord of the Rings. We decided to watch Lord of the Rings. Right. And what struck me by watching it is that this is a film of complete fantasy, but every single person in the cast presented as white. And that's what we need to change.
And it's changing, and you're an activist, and because of you and people like you, your voice is out there, and you're reaching out to actors, young actors who are coming along. You have podcasts. Both of you are doing TV, too. I don't know how you have time to do anything with all that's going on, but it makes a difference in the world. Your voices are heard further than on the stage, and that's something really special. So are you both doing TV with all, like you? I've never watched more TV in my life. The word streaming is like the first word that a baby says now. It's a whole different time. So what, like Michael, what a TV are you doing now if you'd have any time at all along with the Genie?
Yeah, so I'm actually. It's funny. Yes, I just shot a movie for a Hallmark Christmas movie, actually, which was kind of crazy during as we were getting reopened. It was kind of insane. I was literally going back and forth with shooting, but I just shot a movie for Hallmark. It will be out this Christmas, which is also insane how fast that is. But yes, I've been very blessed to be able to get to do TV and film and be a part of that. It's the wonderful thing is the team is so lovely to they obviously get when those opportunities come up and things. There's always so wonderful to work that out with my team and figure out how to make it work because it's such a wonderful opportunity and when we can make it happen, it happens. And so they've always been so supportive about that and it's nice to be able to do something different as well. I mean my love is of course the stage and Broadway. There's just something so incredible about it, but there's also something really awesome and so wonderful about TV and film because of the reach that it can go, right? Amazing. And what it can do for it's how many people you can reach with just one sitting.
No, that's amazing. And Adrienne, you're doing you're right? Did I read?
Well, I actually haven't had the opportunity to do TV yet. I did get a chance to film my first independent film this summer. And that was really exciting, and I learned so much because the medium is just so different from live theater. There's a lot of technical work that you have to be conscious of. And for me, I would just say, Joan, you spoke to, how do you have time, or are you sure you even want to do other things like this? And it's kind of what Michael said. It's so exciting to create that I will take any opportunity. If someone wants me to do a reading or a workshop I have to juggle I want to create. I want to become someone new. It's fun. I can disappear and I can challenge myself. So I always say yes when I can. Yes, yeah, let's do it. Let's work it out. Let's see if we can do it. Well, sometimes in the midst of it, I'm like, oh no, this might have been too much, but I try to say yes. Yeah.
You do it. And it's your gifts, both of you, to us. We're celebrating two of the great shows, the Disney shows back on Broadway. You can celebrate with Michael James Scott, the Genie in Aladdin, right at the New Amsterdam Theater. Adrienne Walker, who plays Nala in The Lion King at the Minskoff Theater. And they're all near each other, and they're all saying welcome. So if you're going to celebrate the heart of New York and really understand that New York is back, take yourself to the theater and enjoy. Both of you, thank you so much. We'll see you soon, and we look forward to talking to you again. All the best.
Thank you, Joan. It's lovely to talk to the legend that is Miss Joan, as we know, as well. So thank you.
I thank you guys, and we all love theater with a passion. And I am Joan Hamburg. You're listening to WABC. Much more to come. Stay tuned.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Ask Joan.
It's so interesting, the different questions that we get. But now that the leaves, even in our own backyard, are changing or have changed, people ask me about getaways. Well, I love Greenport, Long Island. The town has changed a lot, but changed in a good way. It's a perfect fall getaway. It's a charming town, apple picking, pumpkin picking, wine tasting. It's got it all. It was named one of the most charming small towns in New York, and I think it's something you're going to like. And there are vineyards. Do you know there are over 35 wineries open right there? So it's not going to really do you in to get there, It's like a 2-hour drive, but the area is so much fun. They have a Seaport Museum, which you're going to really enjoy. They have a saltwater aquarium, a carousel house right near the waterfront, which is fun. And one of my favorite markets is the Little Creek Oyster Farm and Market, 140-year-old bait and tackle shop on the waterfront, freshly farmed oysters, local beer and wine. All seating is outside. It's open Wednesday to Sunday. And vineyards galore. We used to take our bikes. Well, now my complaining knees say don't do it. But we would take a bike from where we live in the Hamptons, take the ferry and go over. And we check out Bedell Vineyard, which is so much fun. And it's open daily from 11 to 5, 11 to 6 on the weekends. And they have delicious wine. They offer food and wine tastings. McCarry Vineyards in Mattatuck. You do need to book in advance, but it's right on the Sound. So it's beautiful. And Rose Hill Vineyards, terrific on weekends. And Krupski Farm, Krupski, in Peconic. And this, bring the kids, bring your boyfriend, your girlfriend. They have hay rides, flowers, and they have pumpkin-flavored cheese. It's a charming farmer's market, something you're really going to like. And also, a place that I like is the Contra Costa Vineyard at 825 North Road in Greenport. So you get these wines, you get little snacks, you get to breathe great air, and it's a lovely day, I promise you. And now the clock says, enough already. You're coming up to the 3 o'clock, and you and I will do this again. Join me every Sunday at 2, or make sure you check out our podcast. We podcast our Sunday show. We have another podcast called Let Me Tell You, and we've got a lot of stories that I know you're going to love. Enjoy the rest of Sunday. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC.